Should we be surprised that this guy goes to Howard University, where Kamala Harris, that's her alma mater, he's a law student, and she also has a legal background? And then he asked this question at Marianne Williamson's town hall on CNN. And he said reparations for Africans and African Americans. Oh, but he misspoke. Should we be surprised with the Caribbean connections with Jussie Smollett? Jussie Smollett's mother is Caribbean, and Jussie is basically a cousin of Kamala Harris. And there were two Nigerians involved in that whole fabrication with messy Jussie Smollett with his lion self, and also those connections possibly to the Kamala Harris campaign. And then you have the situation with Kim Fox and how he gets off, and contacts from a former staffer from Michelle Obama. And there were maybe some contacts from other places as well. And now people in Kim Fox's office are resigning. And then when Kim Fox recused herself, I don't want to have to get into this in general with the whole Africans versus African Americans, but we need to talk about this, okay? Look, I get it that historically over time, that especially going back about 100 years ago, you had wealthy captain of industry Americans send their children to Europe to be educated because that was considered to be in vogue. And even amongst wealthy American titans, that if your children were educated and cultured in Europe, then they would now have some kind of class and culture and style and etiquette. I understand that throughout the Middle Ages in Europe, the aristocrats and royalty would have their children and their family members be educated in foreign countries outside of their kingdoms, and not just specifically within their own nations, within their own kingdoms. But in those situations with these Europeans and with Americans, it was all quote unquote white on white. Okay, you're an African dude, and for Africans and for all of these other people across the world who are a lot more melanated than these Europeans, and many of you have suffered the same effects of colonialism and imperialism and subjugation from these European powers, as they have carved up the world and they have changed times and seasons and dates and even biblical teaching. I don't see how you're gonna stand up as a nation, as a people, as a group, as a tribe, when you're continuously catering to the so-called white man as he continually sticks his foot up your butt. Okay? This guy, there's a very strong possibility that this guy is some kind of a family connection to royalty back in Nigeria with a particular group. That particular group may have their status going back to being slave traders and slave catchers and being set up by foreign European powers. And we know the corruption. I mean, look, there's corruption all over the world. There's corruption in America. There's corruption in Western countries. There's corruption everywhere. Let's be very honest about that. Okay? No, none of these nations are squeaky clean. There's corruption and oligarchs in all of these nations. Okay? But with the corruption that you have in Nigeria, and I've talked to many Nigerians about this, so I'm kind of familiar. We have a very substantial Nigerian population in this area. There's about 120, 150,000 Nigerians. Okay, so with the corruption that goes on in Nigeria, you know, what are you doing to build up your own nation and your own people? You know, what message are you sending to your people and to the rest of the world when you are possibly one of the elites in your own country, and you come to the United States or some other foreign country, particularly a white country? I could see maybe if you went to another African nation that's in the African Union, or a, you know, quote unquote black country that's a part of the diaspora. Now you go to a white country, even if it is a HBCU. You don't go to a university in your own country. You're not educated in your own country. You come over here and get an education. And when he's done getting his education at Howard, is he going to go back to Nigeria? Or is he going to stay here? Is he going to live here part-time and live over there part-time? Or is he going to go back over there and live full-time? So you want to use that privilege so you can have access to all of the privilege of the rest of the world. But you don't even really, many of them, they don't even really utilize that privilege within their own country, within their own borders. They'll utilize that privilege to access privilege in other parts of the world. And then they'll just leave home and just forget about it, forget where they came from. And then you have the audacity on national television to ask that question in the way that you asked it, whether if you genuinely wanted to ask that question on your own, or, as I would believe, you were planted to ask that question in that particular way. And Marianne Williamson answered it brilliantly. Okay? I'm not going to give her just a 100% endorsement, but I think that she's fairly sincere when talking about reparations. She speaks very well about it. She uses the same arguments and talking points. She's using the same lexicon that we would use. We even have her going out there saying ADOS. And I think that reparations should be on the debate stage. So she's the best candidate right now to talk about reparations. Then I think that she needs to be on that debate stage. But, I mean, that's like me going to Nigeria and just demanding to get benefits. I mean, no. I mean, it's not going to happen. Everybody in Nigeria is going to look at me crazy. Nigerians here will look at me crazy if I were to talk about that. I can't go to Nigeria and get those access to those schools like that, like he can in the U.S. or other countries. You know, Nigeria isn't giving us visas. Nigeria isn't giving us passports or African Union passports. You know, it doesn't work that way. And I get it. You know, America's a different country, and a lot of these other countries, it's more of an open nation as far as letting people in and commerce. Other countries are more closed off. But still, I mean, you come here and take advantage, but you don't even necessarily take advantage of what your own country and what your family has to provide. You come here into other countries and gain access with privilege. You know, so I'm not using this to start a rift between Africans or Nigerians specifically. I mean, personally, my experience with Africans overall has been pretty good. You know, there's been a few situations where it didn't sit right with me. I don't know if it was just a personality difference or a cultural difference, but I've had far more issues with people who are Americans than people who are of African descent more directly or from the continent. But when we look at what he's been doing on social media, you know, I mean, he's displaying the same level of stupidity as the whitest, arrogant, racist-leaning individuals. You get on TV, you use your real name, people can look you up on. I mean, no offense. This is kind of tongue in cheek, but do they not have internet in that part of Nigeria? Do they not have that level of technology in those parts of Nigeria? I can see if he would have got like, hey, my name is Dave. No, he used his real name. He told you he goes to Howard University, that he's in law school. This is the 21st century, dude. That's what people are going to do. People are going to dox you. People are going to look you up, okay? I mean, to potentially be a prince or to have some kind of family connection to royalty, and with all of that privilege that you possibly have, it really hasn't provided you a lot of intelligence. Okay, I don't know how you were raised. Maybe the training just didn't stick, but it's like, really, dude? I mean, I probably didn't have all of the advantages and privileges you had growing up, and I know better. You know, and everyone in the world can go look you up, and here we find on Twitter that he's using derogatory terms towards us, that Akata term, and talking about how he doesn't want to see his women being with us, that if his women are with us, it doesn't count. Then when he gets called on it and exposed, just like these white folks do, he starts doing white splaining. In this case, he starts Nigerian privilege splaining. I'm a Pan-Africanist. Really? You know, I don't use the N-word when referring to Nigerians unless it's Nigerians. I mean, I don't use the N-word when talking about any of our people. Okay? I don't use derogatory terms towards Africans or Nigerians or other brothers and sisters in the diaspora. I don't use those terms. But here we find you do. So we shouldn't be surprised that this guy was used in this situation, because they're trying to fight the reparations argument. They're trying to fight the reparations movement. They're trying to fight the political pressure. They don't want to see reparations on the debate stage. They don't want to see reparations go even more mainstream. They don't want the historical facts, data, and all the forensic information making the case and the argument for reparations. They don't want it to go even more viral than it already has. And even the United Nations and other international bodies have said that the United States owes us reparations. And they don't want to talk about that. And they'll send an agent like this to try to stop. It's like, really? This is the guy that you sent? I mean, if he was sent, if this was all some kind of a ploy, whether if it was the Kamala Harris campaign or something else, which if it is the Kamala Harris campaign, that just shows you how stupid and how sloppy it would be. I mean, they're making Trump world mistakes with the Jussie Smollett situation. With this, it's like, really? You send this guy here, use his real name. He tells you he's at Howard. He tells you he's in law school, and no one's going to be able to connect the dots. And he asked that question in that way. I could see if he just said reparations for the descendants of the enslaved, but he said for Africans and African Americans. No. It's just for ADOS. When I was watching the debate or the town hall, I said that to myself. I said, you're not gonna, I looked at the name and I assumed he was probably an African. I said, and then when he said Africans and African Americans, I was like, buddy, you're not gonna get anything. It's only gonna be for us. This is only gonna be for ADOS. Now if you're someone who could be trusted, you could work with us, but you're not gonna get that check. That check is only gonna be for us. And I didn't want to get into this. My main grief, or my main grievance, my main issue as far as restitution is with the United States and these other Confederate European powers, white powers, the Catholic Church, the Judaizers, and these other European nations, because they, when you really look at the history of it, they were the main ones to put the slave trade in the way that it did, as far as putting us in the situation that we're in. But if we're going to continue to see things like this, and if we're going to continue to get this type of resistance, if these other groups, these quote-unquote so-called minority groups, people of color, are going to be used as shields and as a buffer class or buffer caste to protect the establishment of whiteism in the fight for reparations, then I'm going to come after you just as hard as we're going to go after the Europeans and the white people, you know, so-called white people. Because we know a number of you Africans participated in the slave trade, regardless of what the circumstance was or how it came to be. I know there's a lot of details you need to get into. There's a nuance about it. You know, it's not as simple as that as far as explaining it accurately. But the bottom line is there's a certain level of complicity that went down, as well as Arabs and Muslims. Okay? So as we put political pressure primarily on the United States, we could add into that, hey, you know, if you want to get some support in the funding to cut that check to give us reparations, why don't you get maybe a little bit, or, you know, or if it's, you know, access to resources or other types of benefits that could be given, you know, certain legal status, you know, maybe whatever the case may be. There's a lot of different specific things we could talk about. Other than, I mean, I'm not opposed to cash payments. I'm definitely all about cash payments. But there's other things that we need to talk about when it comes to an ADOS platform of reparations, restoration, and restitution than just money, okay? There's legal protections. There's protected special class status specifically for us, no one else. There's other benefits and legislation that could take place, and legal recognition, legal identity. When it comes to things like freedom of movement, some kind of a tribal status or citizenship status, travel capabilities, you know, access to other nations and resources, you know, visas, visitation, expatriation, things like that. There's lots of other things we could talk about in this debate, especially if it goes on more of an international platform than just simply having the conversation within the United States. Okay, but if some of these people are going to be this way, and if they're going to get like this, then I'm going to put some pressure on you too. You know, and whatever Nigerian group he came from, and if we do the history and find that your ancestors were complicit, were co-conspirators in some way, so to speak, and with whatever privilege and resources that you may have to this day, and that you may have gotten from the British and from others, I'm going to say, well, America, if you want some support in gathering the funding or gathering other advantages, then maybe you should get some of that from some of these Africans that you partnered up with or were complicit, and these Arab nations. It's a little different with the Arab world, because since that time of when the practice of slavery was going on, most of these Middle Eastern and Arab and Muslim regions have changed their power structure. There's been changes, but the continent is a little different. they've had different transitions and different just changeover in power. So to this, this so-called Prince Ogu Irizu, I mean, I didn't want it to have to come to this, but you're kind of forcing the hand. Okay, don't start nothing, won't be nothing, bro. I mean, I don't know what the Nigerian equivalent of that slang would be. Don't start nothing, won't be. You could have just kept your mouth shut. You could have just stayed in your space, stayed in your lane. Don't insert your. This is our issue. If you want to come out and support. If you don't want to support us, you need to step aside. Move to the back. But you're inserting yourself into our policies, our fight, our issues, our positions, our platforms, our agenda, and you're mucking this thing up, trying to be some kind of a saboteur, trying to convolute the message and the fight and the argument. It's like, nah, dude, I don't mess around with the affairs in your country. I don't, I can give my opinion on what I think certain African countries should do, knowing some of the issues that are happening on the continent, but I don't insert myself like that into the affairs of these other countries. I don't push myself into your issues, your policies, your agenda. I mean, this is, with all of the talk of the Russians interfering in the elections for ADOS, I would say this is like the equivalent of the Russians meddling. But then they want to say that the critics and the pundits, they want to say, oh, ADOS is just Russian trolls and Russian bots. ADOS is discourse that's caused by the Russians. No, this guy is the discourse. This guy is the troll. Okay? Ogu, you need to stay in your lane, dude. Keep your mouth shut, sit down, don't stick your neck out, don't get involved, don't get in the way, because you're just going to get run over, man. Okay? Keep yourself out of our affairs. This has nothing to do with you whatsoever. And if anyone in the DC area, which, once again, these Washington DC swamp connections and the possible connections to Kamala Harris, if anyone in the DC area or anyone who's affiliated with Howard University, anyone who's attending Howard University, anyone who's at the law school, if you see this guy, this Ogu Orizu, you need to check him, okay? You need to let him know if you're on our side, if you are ADOS, or if you support ADOS. You need to let him know, stand down and stay in your place. Don't get involved. If you're a part of something, if you're trying to do something, if you have some kind of agenda that conflicts with our interests, you need to stand down. There's no way this could go well for you. Okay? No way. I mean, this guy had the audacity at an HBCU. I mean, it burns me, the fact that this guy is going to one of these schools. And with the college cheating scandal, who knows if he had some special privilege getting into Howard. And maybe if he took a seat from someone who was ADOS sitting in that law school and attending that university. That's supposed to be for us. That school wasn't built for immigrants. That school wasn't built for all people. That school was built for us. Okay? And I'm just going to say this to this dude. If you're going to be like that, and based upon the things that we've seen, the receipts that have been pulled on you on social media, if you're going to be like that, it's like, dude, go back to your country, okay? Why are you here? Why are you in America? Why are you at Howard? Why are you in the DC area? This has nothing to do with you, Okay, you could probably be sitting somewhere up in Nigeria, living a life of leisure and comfort and privilege. Why are you even here doing this? Okay, there's no universities in your country. There's no good legal program or law school in your country. Go back to Africa, dude. Go back to Nigeria, okay? If you're gonna be like this, you need to go back where you came from. It's bad enough we have people who don't look like us who will fight us, or people who are ADOS and who are American citizens who would maybe fight against us, because we have some of our own people talking about we shouldn't get reparations. But then you're an outsider, or as you maybe would say it, an Oyimbo, and you want to play games with this? Nah, bruh. Go back to your country. Okay? And I don't care if someone doesn't think that maybe sounds the right way, but no. I mean, I'm not going to put up with this. I'm not. Okay? This guy has no right to get involved, no right to speak. You know, I was considering it as a possibility, but in the mainstream of ADOS, no one has been talking about, for the most part, going after Africans and going after Arabs. But if we're going to get this resistance, we can add more people to the grievance. We can add more people as far as defendants or co-conspirators. We could do that. It may take a little bit more time and a little bit more work, having to trace all of the tribal lineage and the connections, tracing the forensics, but it could be done. We have researchers, we have people who could do the work. It can be done. And if you're someone, if you're a brother and sister of the diaspora that's an immigrant, Caribbean, African, whatever, or if you're an African or if you're Nigerian, and if you don't have an issue with us demanding reparations from the American government, this doesn't apply to you. But why is this guy getting involved? I get it. Most lawyers will never practice law in a courtroom. But how can he say he misspoke? Or he got his words mixed up? If you are going to be arguing a case in front of a courtroom, if you're going to be making arguments, how can you make such a huge error and say Africans and African Americans? You know, I wouldn't even say African Americans. I would have specifically said ADOS, the American descendants of slavery, or the enslaved. You know, but I'm ADOS, so I know better. I wouldn't make that mistake. I understand the importance of that. I understand the specifics. I understand the importance of heritage and legacy and lineage and parentage. That this isn't about quote-unquote so-called race. This isn't about quote-unquote so-called blackness. This isn't about the labels that the American government could provide on a piece of paper. This isn't about any of that. This is about history, and this is about heritage, and this is about generational wealth and closing the wealth gap. And there's absolutely things that we can do on our own. There's things I'm working on myself right now that I've been working on and I will continue to work on. But America owes us. And the debt needs to be paid. I mean, if I was in the position this guy was probably in, I wouldn't even be worried about this. Okay? I would be with my family, with my people, networking, expanding the wealth, you know, trying to uplift and better my people, and fight up against this system of whiteism. And if there's some broken bridges between some of the people in the diaspora, I would try to mend those bridges and build bridges. Like, but who are you to get into this debate? Who are you to insert yourself in this discussion and to play games with this? Okay? That's like me telling the people in South Africa or Zimbabwe that no, you shouldn't try to get your land back. You shouldn't be taking on the white foreign invaders and the illegal immigrants in your country. You just need reconciliation. You know, it's impractical. You just need to move forward and you just need to work hard. No. If the Zimbabweans want to get their land back from the foreigners, they need to get their land back. If South Africans want to get their land back from foreigners, they need to get their land back. If Africans don't want Indians and Arabs and Europeans and Chinese in their country taking advantage, then they need to kick them out of their country, and they need to put themselves in a position where they could run the affairs of their own country in the right way for the betterment of their people, without having these foreigners and outsiders hold their hands and manipulate and take advantage of the situation. You know, I wouldn't tell Africans, oh, well, but you know, these Europeans maybe know more than you do, or, you know, the Arabs have a lot of oil and money, or, you know, like don't be uppity and be selfish. You need to share with the rest of the world. It's like, no. I believe that Africa is for Africans. And the African people should control their resources. They should control their land. They should control their governments. They should control their policies and their agenda. No foreigner, even people who are in the diaspora outside of the continent, should be dictating to them what they should be doing. But you insert yourself into our argument and our debate? Nah, bro. Nah. You know, you picked the wrong fight. You picked the wrong side. If you are connected, you need to go back to that bourgeoisie Kamala Harris campaign that sent you, and you need to tell her, I changed my mind. I don't want any part of this. And we see this guy now. He was deleting tweets, and then he deleted or privatized his Twitter, and is probably trying to create a new account under a different name. Which what he should have done when he, I mean, it was bad enough he showed his face, but what he should have done when he was on CNN. And he's now trying to explain and cover his tracks. He's doing the same thing like somebody who was caught using a racial slur, which he kind of was caught in a way using a racial slur, or using the N-word, which Akata is kind of like the N-word towards us by Nigerians. Or like he was caught using blackface. And let's get into this, because he was talking about Nigerian women being with us and being with other foreigners, and that doesn't count. That's irrelevant. You're still single if you're not with a Nigerian brother. There's a whole bunch of African dudes come over here and mess with sisters, having illegitimate children, not taking care of them, having bastards. I said it. I've known specifically of Africans whoring around, having unprotected sex, fornicating with American women, getting them pregnant, and then when the woman tells them she's pregnant, he tells her, you need to go have an abortion. I'm talking about men who have wives and families and children back home on the continent. They're over here supposed to be getting an education or visiting or being a tourist, or maybe they're trying to get a green card or a visa. And they do this over here. So you want to sleep with the sisters in America, you want to take advantage of the community over here, you'll isolate yourself in your enclaves, doing separate business and separate affairs. You don't want to mix with us, but then you would have issue if somebody wanted to be with your woman. Or you have issue if someone was to come to your country and get access. And not all, but some, for the ones that this applies to. Or you would have issue if we were meddling in your affairs. But then this guy pulls this. And there's plenty of African dudes that are out there with Asian women, that are out there with Arab women, that are out there with white women, European women. Now, he didn't address those brothers. He didn't address that, from what I could tell, from what we've seen so far. But he's over here policing Nigerian sisters on, if you're not with a Nigerian brother, that doesn't count. You're single. Like, we better not find this guy's been messing with a white girl or a Hispanic chick. You know, I'm not telling people who they should be with, but just the hypocrisy of it. If he's going around saying that, but at the same time he's messing with a white girl, Hispanic chick, Asian chick, Arabic chick, not a Nigerian woman. You know, I wonder what Nigerian women would say about him messing with an American sister if they found out about that, if that's going on. So I don't want this to be another front that we're having a fight. But this message is for the Ogu Orizus of the world, for all of the people who would get involved and stand in the way and insert yourself into this like this individual just did. If you don't support our agenda, if you have an issue with it, that's okay. You don't have to support us. I'm not necessarily looking for allies. But if you do have a problem with it, step aside, go away, okay? And if this issue is so much for you, and if you have so much of an issue with African Americans, why are you here? Why are you going to Howard University? Why do you put businesses in our neighborhoods in certain instances? Why do you take advantage of this American system and American access? Why aren't you in your own countries building up businesses in your own countries or attending your universities and building up your nation and your people? Why are you over here with us? Because if it's going to be this way with the fight for reparations with ADOS, I'll tell you just like 45 will tell you. I don't care. You go back where you came from, chump.